What's going on, y'all? Harry from Harry the Horse Barbecue here, and in this one, I am not horsing around with this peach tea glazed pork roast. We're gonna brine a bone-in pork loin in some peach tea, season it up in a classic Central Texas style with some SPG, smoke it off on the offset and glaze it with a peach tea glaze, and then we will slice on into a juicy, flavorful pork roast that is great for any time of year. Looking to cook up something new this year? Well, the horse has got your back. Let's get it.
Harry the Horse Barbecue.
A bone-in pork loin or a pork roast is essentially just the pork loin of a pig that's attached to the baby back ribs of the pig. Now this cut is rising in popularity because of places like Burnt Bean Company who are serving up an amazing smoked pork chop. When done right, you slice on in and you have a juicy, thick cut pork chop with a little bit of baby back rib attached, and it's got all this smoke, juice, and flavor in it. So I was inspired by the folks over at Burnt Bean and the folks over at Interstellar, and I thought to myself, what if I take the components of a smoked pork roast and mix it with the peach tea glazed pork belly burnt ends from Interstellar, smash them together, and we get a peach tea glazed pork roast, and that sounds like it's not gonna be horsing around. So I've got a bone-in pork roast that's all trussed up, that's ready to go. Let me take you back to when I started this brine. Now, brines are great because you can go with any flavor profile you want in your brine. All I'm looking to do here is amplify the peach tea flavor a little bit and add some aromatics and flavors that are really gonna complement the pork loin. I'm not really looking to do salt, sugars, all those things, because we'll add savoriness with the rub and we'll add sweetness with the glaze. So let's start here with a pretty common brand of peach tea. This is the Pure Leaf brand, and if you saw my peach tea glazed pork belly burnt ends inspired by Interstellar, I'm gonna be doing a very similar flavor profile when it comes to the peach tea brine and the peach glaze. Don't know how many of these to go with? Let's just start cracking them open. So I got this bucket filled up with about 5 liters of peach tea, which is about 10 of these regular sized bottles. To add more flavor to the brine, I'm going in with a whole sweet yellow onion, which I don't want to splash. Okay. Sweet. There's about 6 cloves of garlic. You could do whatever you want there. Some black peppercorns, a little bit of red chili flake, and if you're like me and you have a ton of leftover holiday herbs, throw them in this brine. They're gonna add amazing flavor. So a whole bundle of thyme, a whole bundle of sage, and a whole bundle of rosemary. And you know, you could heat this stuff up and yada yada, I don't really care. I think it's gonna add amazing flavor regardless. I'm just gonna kind of let all these flavors marry, hang out, do their thing. And in comes our loin. Gonna drop her right on in, and we are barely there. I would like for it to go a little bit more. Am I on an onion? I might be on an onion. Either way, we are mostly submerged here. We have a little bit of the fat cap exposed, but nothing too crazy. And we're only going about 24 hours in this brine. The hope and the goal is that the pork loin will absorb a lot of that peach tea flavor, take on some of the scent and flavor of those aromatics, and just add more flavor to this roast. So with this brine done, I'll see y'all in about a day. So it's been somewhere around 28 hours on this brine, and let's check out how this pork loin is looking. Ah, that smells good. You got a lot of that tea scent coming forward, a lot of those aromatics coming through. Little blanket down, and all we gotta do is take it out of the brine. Definitely looking like it changed color quite a bit. Let's give it a pat down. And this is looking like it's been pretty stained by that peach tea and that whole brining process, except for the fat cap on top, which is totally fine. And there's no need to rinse this off. There was no salt in that brine, so I'm not worried about it being overly salty. We were just looking to get some sweetness into this pork loin and perfume it with all those aromatics. And now's the time where we can add some saltiness and some savoriness. And with this still being a little tacky, we should be able to go right over the top with some SPG. Super classic Texas style rub here. Help us build some bark, allow some of that saltiness to penetrate through. Definitely can't forget these ends right here. That barked up end pork chop piece is definitely one of the most sought after bites on a pork loin, that's for sure. And this is a 1 part 16 mesh black pepper to 1 part diamond crystal kosher salt, and then a 1/2 part of granulated garlic just to round it out. No seasoned salt here. I want to keep this pretty simple, let those peach tea flavors shine through at the end, and that looks pretty darn good. All right, this pork loin is brined up and seasoned up, and it's going to impart some amazing sweetness, saltiness, savoriness, and we should be able to bark this thing up beautifully on the smoker. So this pork daddy's all seasoned up and it's ready for the cooker. So let's go fire up the cooker. Y'all know the drill when it's cold out. Tree. A hefty amount of wood to get us started, and I'm just using some leftover coals from a cook I did yesterday. All right, cooker's on its way up to about 250 degrees. So enough horsing around. Let's get this pork roast on. Up and under. Okay, pork roast on this raised rack, middle back of the cooker, something about like that. So we're gonna rock out this cook at about 250 degrees the entire time. That's low and smoky enough for the pork loin to pick up enough smoke flavor. It's a high enough temp to cook this pork loin and really set that bark. And I think those are the most optimal conditions to give us the juiciest, barkiest pork loin at the end of this. Now I'm looking for an internal temperature on this roast for no higher than 140. Bone-in pork roasts like this are notorious for being dry and overcooked. We wanna nail that internal so we're left with a super juicy roast at the end of this cook. Now I've got the damper to the smokestack about a third of the way closed, and that's gonna help slow the airflow down and create a really smoky environment. And our fire is rocking around 250 degrees the entire cook. I'm anticipating about 3 to 4 hours for this cook, so I'll bring y'all back when she's looking purty, but all we gotta do now is close it down. Boom, 2026 shakalaka. All right, y'all, it's been a little over 3 hours on this pork roast. And you know, here in New York in the middle of winter, it's gonna get dark around 4:30, but I'm hoping that this pork roast will be done anytime within the next hour or two, but we never know until we check on it. So let's see how she's doing. Not too shabby, except for this bald spot forming right there. Not sure what happened there, but that fat cap is looking beautiful. The color is looking really nice as well. I gave this a rotation about an hour ago just to even out the cooking. And I think I'm gonna rotate it one more time. There's your money shot right there. That chop is gonna be delectable for sure. So if we take an internal, I don't know if you guys can see that on the Thermapen, but it's reading about 108 in the deepest dead center. We can go through the top as well. And we're looking there at about 118, so not too bad. We're not lagging too far behind. So at this rate, all we gotta do is close it down. And we're gonna continue rocking temps at 250. I'm just looking for a little bit more color on this pork roast. I'm looking for a little bit more fat render, and we wanna nail that internal of 140. And it's kind of crazy at this point in the cook with that pork roast sweating out all that moisture, you can actually smell the peach tea while this pork roast is cooking. So we're on track for having a flavor-packed roast, and you know it's not gonna be horsing around. But I'm freezing, I'm gonna head inside, and I'll catch y'all when I pull this and we cool it down. So I'll see you in a little bit. And right at that 4-hour mark on the smoker, this pork roast is coming off and it's hitting an internal of about 135. And I'm just gonna let the carryover cooking do the rest of the work. And it's not a huge deal because the plan is to chill this down completely, throw it in the fridge overnight, then we'll pop it back on the smoker tomorrow and top it off with that peach tea glaze. So I'll let this chill right here. Then I'll throw it in the fridge and I'll see y'all in the AM. So we're gonna get started on our glaze, and this peach tea glaze could not be simpler. Feel free to add any other ingredients that you like, but I'm going for simplicity and maximum peach flavor. So I'm starting with some Kirkland brand sliced peaches. Okay, come on. Oh my goodness, Kirkland. So this is 24 ounces of these peaches going in. I'm gonna use the whole thing because the more peach flavor, the better. And all we wanna do here is essentially make peach puree. And that's looking smooth as a baby's bottom. Swap this out for a pot. And we'll go in with all of our peach puree. Then we're going in with a whole quart of peach tea. This is the same pure leaf peach tea that I used in the brine. And lastly, some cornstarch slurry just to thicken this up. Just a tablespoon of cornstarch with a little bit of water. And that's gonna help thicken this glaze up. Now in the past, I've added peach preserves, but I think this is good enough to create an amazing sticky glaze that's infused with a ton of peach flavor. You got those tea notes in the background. Should be pretty sweet. Onto the stove until this thickens up quite a bit. And then we'll glaze that pork loin. And after about 20 or 30 minutes on a low simmer, this is what our peach tea glaze is looking like. It's thickened up quite a bit. It's got an amazing sort of orangey brown color. So we've got our peach tea glaze, which is at room temperature, which is gonna make it really easy to apply onto the pork loin. And we have our fully smoked pork loin, which has been sitting on the counter at room temperature for about an hour just to take the chill off of it. That way when we pop it onto the cooker, it's not gonna take forever to come up to serving temperature. With our two major components ready, let's head out to the cooker, set to about 250 degrees, and start applying this glaze. All right, y'all, cooker's hot. You can see over here, 250. Let's get this pork roast on. Same deal, right on this raised rack, just to stay tidy. And then we're just gonna come on through with our glaze and drizzle right over the top. Just get as much coverage as possible. The spooning technique will work for the majority of this, but we're definitely gonna have to spread this around a little bit just to get full coverage. but this is easily one of my favorite glazes I've ever created on this channel. Color's amazing. The flavor is sweet, tangy, sticky. Now, once that glaze is on, you can come through with a nice silicone brush, like this one from ThermoWorks. Do a little dip in your glaze. Spread that baby around. And that's pretty much all she wrote for now. So that is application number 1 of this peach tea glaze. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna rock temps at about 250 degrees. That's gonna help the pork loin come up to serving temperature, which is about 140. And it's also really gonna help tack on this glaze to where it almost adheres to the bark and becomes part of the pork loin itself, which is gonna be incredible. So the plan moving forward is to base this pork roast in this peach tea glaze every about 20 minutes or so. I'm thinking this is gonna take about 2 hours to warm up the pork loin to about 140 degrees internal, which is optimal serving temperature. And if you do the quick math, it's gonna be about 6 times where I'm gonna come out and base with this peach tea glaze. So I'll see y'all in a little bit where we can slice into this bad mamma jamma. So if you've been with me over the last couple days making this peach tea pork roast, make sure you hit that subscribe button and I'll meet y'all back inside when it's time to slice in. After about 2.5 hours on the smoker, we tacked up that peach glaze about 5 or 6 times or so. Let's take a look. This thing has definitely darkened up quite a bit. The bones got a little darker than I wanted, but that glaze added this like orange, golden brown color all around this roast. I gotta dive in at this point. All right, and down the center we go. That was a rough cut job, but there we go. Looking pretty darn sweet though. At this rate, I just gotta get me a chop out of this. There's like this whole front bone here that's like, ah! This whole roast had this whole bone in the front. Makes this a real pain to kind of slice through, but there's a big meaty chop for y'all. That's looking incredibly juicy and incredibly good. I gotta take a big old bite out of this. Oh my God, that is incredible. It's so juicy. That fat cap part, that's where the money's at right there. Probably should have taken down that fat cap just a little bit. And we reserved some of that glaze just for this moment. Oh yeah, that's what we want. Just drizzle that glaze right on there. Make sure you make enough of this glaze because that's gonna add a ton more flavor to the interior. That's just ridiculous. Not too often do I cook pork on this channel that isn't ribs or pork belly, but this pork roast is actually changing the game, for me at least. This is such an easy cook because you're not spending 12, 15, 16 hours by a fire. I think in total this was around like a 6-hour cook between 2 different days. So I'm definitely all about the quick cooks, especially when they turn out this delicious. Speaking of good, this is so good that I cannot stop, but I actually am gonna have to, but I gotta take at least one little nibble. I'm really kicking myself about this fat cap right now, which is such a bummer because I thought it wasn't super thick and I thought it would render out a bit. And it's a bummer because that's where all that glaze is. But pour a little glaze over the top, and this is not horsing around. So even though we did a short time in that brine, the dead center of this definitely smells like the peach tea. It's got a little bit of that flavor from the peach tea, which is amazing. You're getting tons of smoke flavor. It's juicy. It's clearly bite through the entire chop. And that glaze just sits on the exterior and creates this sticky, sweet, unctuous coating on the outside that you just want to keep diving into. It's definitely a showstopper, plus you get the bones, so you get a little baby back rib action going in there. At this point, I don't know what to tell y'all except for stop horsing around and make this already. Thank y'all for tuning into Harry the Horse Barbecue. I really appreciate you checking out this video. Make sure you subscribe for the vibes, hit that like for some sweet tea, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on this roast. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I'm posting new content, and you can follow me on Instagram at Harry the Horse Barbecue. Tag me so I can see what y'all are cooking because y'all inspire these cooks. And with that being said, there's only one more thing, y'all. This one is going straight to the horse's mouth. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace. Taking this on the go.